Hello, 7th graders. Chapter 3 is on operations with rational numbers. You've spent the last 2 class days learning about integers and rational numbers. Now it's time to apply that knowledge and do some operations with them. So before we get to the new information, we're going to review a little bit to make sure we're ready. So, multiplying fractions. We learned how to do this back in like 4th and 5th grade. When we multiply it straight across. So I will show you how to do this first one. Oops, and then you're going to try 2 through 4 on your own. So you multiply straight across. 9 times 7 is 63. 14 times 6 is 84. Then what we can do with that fraction is we can simplify. Both 63 and 84 are divisible by 3. 63 divided by 3 is 21. 84 divided by 3 is 28. And I see a fraction I can still simplify further. Both 21 and 28 are divisible by 7. 21 divided by 7 is 3. 28 divided by 7 is 4. So my final answer to number 1 would be 3/4. All right, pause the video, do numbers 2 through 4 by yourself, answer in simplest form, then play back the video to see if you got them right. All right, 3/5 times 4/7 is 12 over 35. Number 3 shows another way that you can find the product of 2 fractions in simplest form. You can simplify it before you multiply. So I see 11 on top and 33 on bottom. I know both those numbers are divisible by 11. So I cross out 11, put 1, I cross out 33 and put 3. And then 1 times 10 is 10, and 8 times 3 is 24. Which can actually be simplified further to 5/12. And then number 4, 3 as a whole number is the same thing as 3 over 1, so 4/9 times 3 is 4/3. All right, next let's practice some division with fractions. When we divide by a fraction, you multiply by the reciprocal of the divisor. So how you probably heard this is you make it a multiplication sign, and then you flip it. So notice in the example, we have 2/5 divided by 7/10. Flip that second fraction to the reciprocal, 10/7, and make sure it's a multiplication sign. All right, I'll show you number 5, and then pause it and see if you can just go through 8 on your own. So 1/2 divided by 1/4, we're going to make this multiplication, and then say 4 over 1. 1 times 4 is 4, 2 times 1 is 2. This can be simplified to 2. All right, pause the video, do number 6 through 8 on your own. Go. All right, and then the last section of review is on the order of operations. So remember, we use PEMDAS. Parentheses first, then exponents, then multiplication and division, then addition and subtraction. So in number 13, you would do 6 divided by 3 first, which is 2. 21 minus 2 is 19. In number 14, you would do the parentheses first. 7 minus 4 is 3. Then times 3 is 9. 18 plus 9 is 27. All right, pause the video, do 15 through 18 on your own. Check back to see if you got them right. All right, so for lesson 3.1, we are going to be describing rational numbers as decimals. So a lot of this is converting fractions to decimals. We did learn how to do this in 6th grade, but now we're going to have to switch back and forth fluently. So let's look at this first example. A rational number is a number that can be written as a ratio of 2 integers, a and b, where b is not 0. That's because you can't divide by 0, that's undefined. So we covered that definition in 3a. A rational number can be written as a fraction. The decimal 0.37 is a rational number because if we would say that out loud using place values, we say 37 hundredths. Well, that's the same thing as the fraction 37 over 100. So for part A, we are going to convert these fractions to decimals. I prefer you try this without a calculator. If you need a calculator to check your work, you can. All right, so 1/4, same thing as 1 divided by 4. When I transfer that to a decimal, I like to think of quarters in a dollar. 1/4 is the same thing as 0.25 or 25 hundredths. 5/8 or 5 divided by 8 is 0.625. Oh, that first number should be a 0. All right, 2/3, or 2 divided by 3, is 0.6 repeating. Remember, if a number keeps repeating itself forever, we can put the bar over it and then only write 1. Your calculator probably wrote 0.666667. That's because it rounded up, because it cannot show the decimal repeating forever. All right, 2 divided by 9 is 0.2 repeating. And 12/5, or 12 divided by 5, is 2.4. Now the last two switch it up on us. We write the fraction equivalent of the decimal. 0.2, if we say it out loud, that's also 2/10. So 2/10 in simplest form is 1/5. And then 0.875, or 875 thousandths, is actually the equivalent of 7/8. All right, so B says find the corresponding fraction of the decimal equivalents. We already did that. And C, let's make a conjecture. What do you notice about the digits after the decimal point in the decimal forms of the fractions? So notice that what they want you to notice here is that when we have 0.875, we can start with the fraction 875. Yes, we want to simplify it to 7/8, but you can start with that fraction over 1,000, because you can say that as 875 thousandths. All right, so let's reflect on this a little bit. Consider the decimal 0.10100100001. Keeps going. Do you think this represents a rational number? So instinct is to say that it repeats because it kind of has a pattern, but just because it has a pattern does not mean it's repeating. This decimal actually does not repeat because the pattern switches up every time. It's a different amount of zeros. Because it switches up, this pattern will repeat forever, and it is irrational. Because it doesn't repeat, the number goes on forever. All right, and then do you think a negative sign affects whether or not a number is rational? Take -8/5 for an example. The negative sign is not going to affect it because that's still written as a fraction. So that is still rational. The negative sign does not affect whether or not it's rational. All right, and then before we get into this next example, let's look at 3 up here. Do you think a mixed number is a rational number? That was like our example 12/5, which was 1.4. That is rational. Mixed numbers are still a fraction. They are rational. All right, so this next part we're actually going to skip over. This shows the long division way to write a fraction as a decimal. You could divide, because we can't divide 5 by 16 as easily, we can add the decimal and then zeros and just keep adding zeros until we get our answer. So notice they say add a 0, and then this is just long division. So then part B, when we divide 13 by 33, we do 13.0 and then as many zeros as we need. And then in this one, we actually notice that the 39 starts repeating. So it's 0.39 with the repeating bar over it. You will not have to do long division to find decimals on your homework today. All right, we are still going to practice up at the top here though. So write each rational number as a decimal. You can just use your calculator for these, or some of them we should already know. 1/3 is a common one that you should have memorized, 0.3 repeating. 9/20 is 45 hundredths, or 0.45. And then 4/7, use your calculator for that one. Your calculator will tell you that it's 0.5, oops, there should, what the? 0.57142857. Notice that 57 repeats, so we're going to take away that 57 and put a repeating bar over all 6 of those digits. All right, and then example 2, where you're writing mixed numbers as decimals, you can do long division the same way they did in the last example for that. So this example says Sean rode his bike 6 3/4 miles to the Science Museum. Write 6 3/4 as a decimal. So the great thing about mixed numbers is that you already know the whole number is 6. So it's going to be 6 point something. Then we have to figure out what 3/4 is. and 3/4 is 0.75. We add 0.75 to 6 because we know our whole number is already 6, and our answer is 6.75. All right, we're going to do number 7 together, and then you're going to try number 8 on your own. So Yvonne made 2 3/4 quarts of punch, right? 2 3/4 as a decimal. We know 2 is going to be the whole number, and 3/4 is the same one that they just found up here. So my answer is going to be 2.75. All right, do number 8 on your own. Play the video back to check it. Go. All right, 7 1/3 is 7.3 repeating. And then part 8 says, is it terminating or repeating? It is repeating. And then I forgot to do this for 7. That is a terminating decimal. So both are rational. All right, your homework today is to do numbers 1 through 17 odd. Just for a little extra encouragement on watching the video, I'm going to do 2 of these with you. So number 1, write each rational number as a decimal. Then tell whether it is terminating or repeating. So we can abbreviate this as T or R. So T for terminating, R for repeating. First, we need to write it as a decimal though. You can do 3 divided by 5 in your calculator, or you can know that 3/5 is the same thing as 6/10, which is written as 0.6. That is a terminating decimal. Number 3, you can do 4 divided by 12 in your calculator, or you can know that that is equal to 1/3, which is 0.3 repeating, so that is a repeating decimal.